All right, looks like we are live. Welcome back to WMMA Now with your host, Chuck Stevenson, and welcome to episode number 82 of the WMMA Report, our regular show where we go over just about everything that's going on within the last week of the world of the women's divisions of mixed martial arts. You know, we got news, we got fight results, we got fight previews, we got just about a little bit of everything going on in this show. Going to have a nice little discussion topic, going to talk about pound for pound and, you know, why you probably never really see me talk about it other than tonight and why I just ignore it. And I'll give an example. I'll give a couple of reasons why, and then I'll show you an example of what to me is a bad pound for pound list. Anyway, let's get into where we always start with the fight results. So first up, we're going to Czech Republic. Last Wednesday, it had Octagon number, I believe it was 21. Octagon 20 had a strawweight bout between Evelina Wozniak on the right there with the redhead defeated Magdalena Sermova via unanimous decision. Wozniak climbed to 4-0. Sermova fell to 10-3. Nice little upset there. I just watched that fight right before I started the stream. Finally caught up to it. Nice upset. Wozniak, very strong grappler. Didn't do too bad on the feet either, but man, you know, Sermova's no slouch on the ground. But Wozniak was able to just really control her in a lot of places. And, you know, even when Sermova had her moments, Wozniak would often just reverse them. So she did really well in that fight. Very impressed with the fighter who is now 4-0. Then on Thursday night, late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, depending on where you're at. Ryzen 26, let me switch over there. Had 3 ladies bouts. First up, at a 112 catchweight bout, Sakura Mori and Eru Takebayashi had a 112, 51 kilogram catchweight bout that ended in a no contest. And that was due to Sakura missing weight at weigh-ins the day before. She was penalized that even if she were to win by finish, it would result in a no contest. If Takebayashi had won, the result would stand. Sakura submitted her at 1 minute and 37 seconds of the first round, but because of the weight miss and the penalties, it was a no contest. So, you know, a lot of the Asian promotions, they do not mess around if you miss weight, and this was a very good example. Big stage for these 2 teenagers here. Both of them are high school students, like 17 years old. Big stage opportunity for both of them. Sakura, you know, she could have had a really good win, really good rising debut, but it kind of fell flat because of the no contest. Next up, at super atomweight, 108 pounds, Kana Asakura defeated Ai Shimizu via unanimous decision. Asakura climbed to 18-4. Shimizu fell to 5-1. Upon first viewing, I thought this fight was pretty close. Subsequent viewings, it wasn't as close as I had first thought, but Asakura, I thought, just soundly outstruck Shimizu on the feet, on the ground. When it came to their wrestling, which I knew they're both strong wrestlers and was worried that they would neutralize each other. And that's basically what happened, was they neutralized each other as far as their wrestling went and canceled each other out. So then Asakura just stuck to basically outstriking Shimizu on the feet. Shimizu came on strong in the 3rd round, probably knew she was down in the fight, but just wasn't able to do it. So Asakura comes away with the win. And then the final ladies bout, not only of this event, but also of 2020, Ayaka Hamasaki defeated Miyu Yamamoto via submission due to leg scissors choke at 1 minute 42 seconds of the first round to capture the vacant Ryzen FF super atomweight belt. Hamasaki climbed to 21-3. Yamamoto fell to 6-5. You know, Hamasaki. Switch that picture over there. There we go. Hamasaki continues to impress me, like with every fight. You know, she just keeps continuing to win, and I mean, other than that loss to Sahiham, but she just continues to get better. They showed in the Ryzen Confessions that she had actually worked on that leg scissors choke with a fighter who had also fought that night, and then she executed it in the fight. We got a super chat from the brother man. Thank you very much. Let me see here. How's everything? And I deserve to win that fight. Well, thank you for the super chat. That's very generous. However, after watching the fight like 2-3 times now, I have to disagree. I mean, the grappling, I thought they basically canceled each other out, but I thought Asakura just outstruck very quickly. But thank you, DeBran, for the super. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to spend that money. I might just put it all towards, reimbursing myself for things I've spent on the channel. Like I have the big rig here. Also, let me see. Or I might donate it to like a charity group, or I have a community project I'm thinking of working on, restoring Spanish War Memorial, the Spanish American War Memorial, but we'll have to think about that. Anyway, that is it for this past week's fights. So let's move on to where we always go next, the news. So got a bunch of fight announcements here. Let's get started. So first up, UFC January 20th. Natalia Silva has had to bow out due to an injury from her flyweight bout against Victoria Leonardo. Leonardo will now will now face the UFC debutant Manon Fiorot, who's coming in at 5-1. Keep an eye out on this fight. Leonardo had a very impressive win in the Dana White Contender Series, and she's an Invicta veteran. But Manon Fiorot, definitely a flyweight to keep an eye on in this coming year. She is very strong. Also on that no, that's it for January 20th. Anyway, next up for UFC's March 13th event, most likely a fight night, they've added a strawweight bout between Jinyu Fry coming in at 9-6 and Gloria DePaula coming in at 5-2. That should be a good one there too. Jinyu Fry, she's up against the wall, lost 2 straight bouts since entering the UFC. DePaula, very strong looking fighter coming off of the Contender Series. And then on March 20th, another UFC fight night, they've added a strawweight bout between Cheyenne Bays coming in at 5-1, taking on Kay Hansen coming in at 7-4. Then on Octagon 21 goes down January 21st in the Czech Republic. They added a bantamweight bout between Lucia Pudilova coming in at 9-6. She's taking on Marta Volacek coming in at 5-1. That Octagon, they put on some nice fights, and Lucia Pudilova, she's their UFC veteran in there. Just got her first win since getting cut from the UFC, looking to make a comeback. Then UFC has a fight night going down on February 27th. They've added a flyweight bout between Montana De La Rosa coming in at 11-6. She's taking on Maia Bueno Silva coming in at 7-1. That should be a good one as well. Good fight for both of those two. And then Deep 100th Impact goes down February 21st. Deep has been around. This is their 20th year of operations, hitting their 100th Impact event, although they've had other, events besides that weren't part of their numbered Impact series. Anyway, they've added a flyweight bout between Shizuka Sugiyama coming in at 19-6-1. She's taking on Aoi Kuriyama coming in at 2-1. Bit of a gimme fight for Sugiyama, but it's hard to give Sugiyama a fight at flyweight in Japan that isn't going to be a gimme fight at this point, honestly. I mean, I kind of feel bad for her. I mean, there's no point for her to leave Japan because what with the COVID and everything, it's going to be hard to bring in opponents for her as well. I mean, she's just stuck between a rock and a hard place. And which is where Aoi Kuriyama is going to be as well, probably. Then another bout added for the UFC Fight Night on March 20th, a bantamweight bout between Julia Avila coming in 8-2. She is taking on Yulia Stolyarenko coming in 9-4-1. that should be a good bout as well. You know, two fighters who like to get the finish done, you know, early in the first. Be interesting to see how they do it if it goes past the first. Then some injury news. Betchko Hea is out of her fight with Wu Yanan for UFC Fight Island 7 due to she had to undergo surgery to have her appendix removed. So from what I can tell, everything went good. So she's on the mend now. But she has been replaced by UFC newcomer Jocelyn Edwards, who's coming in with a record of 9-2. So they did find a replacement there for Wu Yanan, which is nice. You know, I hate to see two fighters get stuck because of one fighter having to bow out, even if it's not that, you know, fighter's fault necessarily. Then there is an MMA event going down this Saturday, June 9th in India. Soul of Warriors 2 is going to feature a super atomweight bout between Priya Sani coming in at 4-0. She is taking on Monica Kiran. Is it Gag? Yeah, Monica Kiran Gag coming in at 2-1. So nice little ladies bout over there in India. And then finally in the news, One Championship Unbreakable is going to go down January 22nd in, I believe, in Singapore. And they've added their 115-pound atomweight bout. Mung Bo coming in at 15-5, taking on Samara Santos coming in at 11-7-1. Bit of a gimme fight there for Mung Bo. I mean, she just came in and cracked Priscilla Gal, and now she's taking on Samara Santos. Santos has only won like a single fight in her last 7. That's definitely a bit of a gimme fight. Anyway, that is it for the news. So we have one ladies bout going on this weekend. Let me bring this open here. It's going to be at Valor, I believe 77. Let's see, Valor Fighting Challenge 77 in Knoxville, Tennessee. One ladies bout in the bantamweight division. Serena De Jesus coming in at 1-2, taking on Christina Adcock coming in at 3-4. Very typical looking records for what is very much a regional bout here. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at this. Talk about the stats here. Southpaw Outlaw De Jesus coming in at 1-2. Roadhouse Christina Adcock coming in at 3-4. De Jesus coming in off of 2 straight losses. She lost a split in what's technically a exhibition bout to Taylor Guardado at the start of the year for the Invicta Phoenix series. Then she lost a unanimous decision to Evelyn Martins 3 months ago at Titan, which I've heard was a very arguable decision. I haven't watched the fight myself, however. Adcock coming in off of a win 3 months ago for Valor Fights. Before that, she had lost 2 straight. Let's see. Adcock's the elder fighter by 2 years, 30 to De Jesus is 28. De Jesus going to be the taller fighter, 5 feet 8 inches, 173 centimeters to Adcock's 5 feet 5 inches, 165 centimeters. De Jesus going to have a reach advantage as well, 69.5 inch, 177 centimeters to Adcock's 68 inch, 173 centimeters. So I don't have a pick for this one. I haven't seen enough of Adcock to really say anything. De Jesus is hit or miss, obviously. Looks like, I mean, both of them are. One thing I will say about Adcock, though, she has fought at both bantamweight and flyweight. And at bantamweight, she's actually 2-1 as a bantamweight. So out of her 3-4 record, she actually has a winning record fighting at bantamweight. It's at flyweight where she has that losing record. So she should make for a better fight for her at bantamweight versus Serena De Jesus. So that is it for the upcoming fights for this weekend. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about pound for pound rankings. You know, I don't do them. I don't really involve myself in them too much. If I do, it's like on the forums, and I just point out, you know, a lot of people's logical fallacies. So why don't I mess with pound for pound? So the big thing for me, first of all, is that honestly, it's just a never ending like circle jerk, as it were, of arguments. It just seems like people will just go on and on and on with their arguments about pound for pound. It just gets, exhausting after a while. Another problem I have is that I don't think most people who like to argue and talk about it really understand the concept of pound for pound, which is that it's supposed to be like a mix of, how would this fighter do at this weight against opponents, and the ranking is supposed to be based on that. And I just don't think most people understand pound for pound, and it really shows when they show their lists, and it's like, wow, how did you come up with that? And another thing with pound for pound is that it's very hard to make arguments for it. Whereas, like, if you're ranking someone within their own division, it's a lot easier to make rankings based on that compared to pound for pound, where it's just pure speculation, really. It's just pure speculation, especially in MMA, where fighters don't move between weights too often. I mean, in boxing, it's a lot easier because you have fighters who are champions at multiple weight classes. I mean, they'll move up for one title fight, move down for another, then they'll move up 2 fights, stuff like that. It's a lot easier to discuss pound for pound in boxing than it is in MMA, where you have these 10-pound or more differences between the weight classes, and very few fighters, move up or down in the weight classes. I mean, there are fighters that do it, but usually if they move up or they move down, it's like permanent or semi-permanent. Whereas in boxing, you'll have fighters that move up and down all the time, usually seeking like a championship belt. So those are my reasons for why I really don't care for pound, and why I don't bother making my own list or anything. I'll talk about the rankings, but only as far as the divisional ones go. Now, I have the Sherdog picture up there because I wanted to use the Sherdog list as an example of, to me, this is a bad example of pound for pound. And you really have to read the attaching article with it as well. So it has the subheader, Ayaka Hamasaki closed out 2020 in style. The 38-year-old Tokyo native captured the vacant Rising Fighting Federation atomweight crown, well, it's super atomweight, with a spectacular submission, tapping out Miyu Yamamoto with a leg scissor choke in the opening stanza of their bout on New Year's Eve in Saitama, Japan. Outside of a loss to Sherdog's consensus #1 atomweight Sahi Ham, Hamasaki has been on a roll since 2018, winning 7 of her 8 appearances within the Japanese promotion. However, that lone defeat prevents her from climbing the ladder in our female pound-for-pound rankings, as she remains positioned directly behind Ham at number 13. Now, this is when I'm going to get into this. Now, I don't have it pictured, but they do have their other contenders, and I guess they're like ranked as well. At number 11 is Alimale McFarlane, 12 Sahi Ham, 13 Ayaka Hamasaki, 14 Holly Holm, and 15 Xiaonan Yan. So you have a fighter who has won 7 of her last 8 and recently came off a title fight winning bout. And her only loss is to the consensus, to what they say is the consensus #1 in her division. Yet that's not good enough to rank her pound for pound. And the consensus #1 in that weight class isn't even on the freaking list here. That's what. Meanwhile, okay, so let's go down this list here and talk about, who deserves what. So #1, Amanda Nunes. Fine. I have no problem with that. She is a champion in 2 different weight classes. That is like the very definition of pound for pound, just about. Because she has proven that she can go between weight classes and do it, rather than just speculating. #2, Valentina Shevchenko. I don't really have a problem with this one either, because who has Shevchenko lost to besides Amanda Nunes? I mean, she's dominant in her own weight class, and you know what? She was dominant at 135, other than when she fought Amanda Nunes. Number 3, Cyborg. I would not have Cyborg that high. First of all, if you're going to talk about recent losses, her getting knocked out in 52 seconds wasn't that long ago. I mean, yeah, it was like, I guess, coming up on 2 years probably. But as far as recent fights, recent record goes, that was within her last 4 fights. And honestly, she hasn't beaten the greatest of competition since then. She beat Felicia Spencer by decision, beat Julia Budd, who's also on this list, and you could argue shouldn't be. And then she beat Arlene Blenko, who had already lost to Budd twice. So her list of wins aren't that great, considering she just got knocked out in 52 seconds not that long ago. Number 4, you have Weili Zhang. So you have Zhang. I don't blame. I think she should be ranked high on this list. She is the consensus number 1 in her division, and it is easily the deepest of the women's divisions as far as competition goes. So I don't have a problem with them listing Zhang. But then you have Rose Namajunas at number 5. Okay, Rose is just coming off a win preceded by a loss, a knockout loss, no less. So you don't rank Sahi Ham, who's the consensus number 1 in her division, and you don't list Ayaka Hamasaki and say that, oh, well, she had a recent loss. Well, her recent loss was by split decision. Rose Namajunas got knocked the F out. How do you rank someone at number 5 pound for pound if she just suffered a knockout loss within her last 2 fights and say, well, another fighter can't be listed because she just lost recently? That's some crap right there. Jessica Andrade, number 6. She's like 1-1 in her last 2. But you can't argue that she should be up there because, well, actually Andrade just lost like two fights in a row now as well. She's lost 2 of her last 3. Her only argument really right now for being up on that list is that she went up to flyweight and defeated a recent title challenger within the first round. So that's really the only argument for putting Andrade on the list. Jermaine Darren Dami. She's been a champion in 2 weight classes, technically, although she beat another bantamweight to win the featherweight title. I don't want to waste time on Jermaine Darren Dami. Joanna. Let's talk about Joanna. Joanna is, let's see, how many losses has she taken recently? Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 16-4, and those 4 losses have come within the last 6 fights. So she's 2-4 in her last 6. Now, granted, all of those losses were to title fights, but still, she's 2-4 in her last 6, and you have her at number 8. Then you have Giuliana Velazquez. Hey, I like Giuliana Velazquez, but she only has 1 really good win to her name against, and that's Ilima McFarlane, who's at number 11. But let's be honest here. Ilima McFarlane doesn't really have any good wins to her name. Velazquez is undefeated. That's probably her best attribute right now, and the fact that she is the recent Bellator champion. But you could argue that she doesn't belong on the pound-for-pound list either. Then you have, at number 10, Julia Budd. Julia Budd is literally coming off a loss. A loss in which she got finished. She is coming off a loss, right? Okay, she's coming off 1 win. She's coming off a win over Jessie Mealy that she was expected to win. But before that, she got finished. She got TKO'd by Cyborg. So how can you say one fighter doesn't deserve to be on the list with a recent loss when it was a title fight And then here we go, another fighter who had suffered a recent loss within the last year, within her last 2 fights. I'm sorry, that's some crap. And then again, you don't have the consensus #1 atom weight at all on your pound-for-pound list. This list is garbage. And this is like a major MMA website's pound-for-pound list, and it is just absolute crap. I mean, and that's just by going by who they excluded. So they excluded #1 atom weight Sayam. They excluded the #2 atom weight Ayaka Hamasaki. Alimile McFarland's ahead of both of those two, and she's coming off a loss. It just ticks me off that this list is this bad. And that's why I don't mess with pound for pound. Also, it makes me mad at Sherdog because they have like a serious bias against atom weights. Because one, they don't have a single atom weight on their pound for pound list. It is the smallest weight class, and yet you have the #1 right now who's on like a 6-fight winning streak. 4 of 6 fights were title fights. And she doesn't deserve a spot on this list with the likes of fighters who are like have recent losses. Joanna, who is like 2-4 in her last 6. Rose, who got knocked out within the last 2 fights. GDR, Julia Budd deserves to be on the pound for pound list above the likes of Sahi Hum and Ayaka Hamasaki. I'm sorry. I mean, and they're in the biggest weight class. She's in the biggest women's, like really established women's weight class. So, yeah. I'm sorry. This is just to me, this is a bad pound for pound list. And this is actually very typical of most pound for pound lists. And that's why I don't get into them. So that's it for the discussion. Let's go ahead over to some comments. Most of them are from the Brother Man. Thanks for commenting, the Brother Man. Let's see. Well, first, okay. I believe I dominated hard in that fight. Again, I just have to disagree. Watched it 2 or 3 times. Asakura won every striking exchange. Neither of them were really close to finishing. And watching, knowing the Ryzen rules, I really didn't do anything offensively to really come out ahead in that fight. Also, Wulan is going to fight next week. Yeah, I got to that point. The Sherdog's still on my pound for pound list. What the hell? I don't know. Did they? All right, so that's it for comments, and that's it for this episode of the WMMA Scene Report. So, if you're watching this on the replay, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like the video, please give it a like, and while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to WMMA Scene Now, the most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.